what percentage of the conclusions that you currently hold about the world that we share do you think are accurate?
You just out for a stroll? Yeah, we walk every night.
Okay, you live around here then?
Yeah.
Cool. I like this area. I live in Olympia, but Olympia can be pretty sleepy on the weekdays. Have you, are you from this area?
Not originally. You lived here about how many years, hon? Do you think it is now?
5.
5? Is
5
it
years?
Well, we moved here in 2016, so I guess it's 6.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome to the area. I've been in the kind of Olympia area for about 22 years, so it's home for me, but I'm originally from the South.
I can
So
hear a little bit of that in your accent.
yeah, can you? Hasn't totally gone yet, huh? That's cool. All right. So you said your name is Tyson?
Yeah.
Tyson?
Right. Like the boxer or the chicken?
Okay. Cool. All right. And again, my name's David. And did I explain what I was doing? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Cool. Is there an idea or a conclusion or a belief that you have that you want to explore that I can ask questions about? You said you had a book.
Are you recording now?
Yes. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. You said you had a book that was coming out that you might want to talk about.
I do.
Like a basic
I have a
idea
book
about
coming
that.
out. It'll be hitting the shelves in March
Okay.
through Interlink Publishing. It's called The Pandemic of Delusion.
The Pandemic of Delusion.
I think the subtitle is something like Staying Rational in an Increasingly Irrational World.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really interested in that kind of stuff. I'm interested in how people form beliefs and how they decide that the reasons that they're using support the level of confidence that they have in it.
I think my book addresses that head on from a very wide, 1,000-foot viewpoint that is very interdisciplinary,
Okay.
and it really touches on a very wide range of characteristics, phenomenon, traits that all affect how we interpret facts and belief.
Cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about your background and maybe the path you took to get you to write this book?
Well, my background is in science. I worked as a research scientist for a good number of years. Then I turned software developer.
Okay.
I spent a little while back as an adult. I spent some time in the Peace Corps, and I also, more recently, when I was living in Manhattan, I did a lot of speaking and talking in the area
Okay.
on different. It was actually in the context of atheism, but I pretty much focused on topics about. I focused on not bashing religion, but on encouraging fact-based thinking.
Okay. critical thinking, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and trying to the topic of the book is to help people understand um, and be a little bit skeptical about their own thinking and all the various influences and factors that can lead them to adopt mistaken beliefs or even delusions, and as well to understand why other people might be incomprehensible to you in terms of their thinking, but it's really consistent with all of the factors that make us susceptible to belief, and help belief to become more and more ingrained as we're more exposed to it.
Okay. So if you could maybe form the main issue that you're concerned with, that'd be something.
Well, I think the book is um, the topics in the book I've thought and wrote and spoke about for a long time, but I think the book coming out is particularly appropriate now because we live in a time when we really are being assaulted by a pandemic of belief. And that's being exacerbated by a modern information media, which makes it so easy to confuse facts and to distort beliefs and facts so that you can believe almost anything and get that reinforced in this information environment we have. So it's information. The information environment we live in is kind of like the vector that has tremendously accelerated the level and the severity of the beliefs we adopt.
Okay. Seems like it's really easy to have confirmation bias these days.
Extremely, yes.
Like we can have a belief, and if we look hard enough, especially in this age of information, and the ease of getting information, we can find ways to support.
Absolutely. Not only, you don't have to look very hard, right? It's very easy now, in fact, to find confirmation of whatever it is you might want to think, or whatever it is other people are telling you. And the problem is that we know from the science that we're all susceptible to belief. There's none of us that are immune. As we're exposed to ideas, they become ingrained in our neural network through repetition. And just like we learn language at an early age, we don't set out to learn language. We just pick it up sort of by osmosis. The same thing with other ideas. When we're exposed to ideas, we become more and more and more comfortable with them. And as we become more comfortable with them, they seem more and more reasonable to us. And they seem more commonsensical. And we're open to hearing more about them. And not only that, but we know from the science that that these beliefs are sort of rose-colored glasses that in fact modify our sensory input, so that we start, our brains only accept a small amount of our sensory input, and it largely falls around either what supports our confirmation bias or something that starkly offends it. And so we actually start to preferentially perceive those things that confirm our biases. Not only that, but our brains, like the blind spot in your eye, start to fill in our perceptions. And those perceptions are then remembered. And every time we recall that memory is then recreated. We don't store memories like a videotape. We sort of recreate them like a docudrama. And so every time we recreate them, we're like a new filmmaker introducing new biases to the story. And then that new memory, that revised memory, becomes the foundation of why we're so sure it's true, because we remember that.
Right. And we trust our memory maybe more than we should. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely, yes. We should all be very skeptical. In fact, you could do a lot of tricks yourself to show how fragile your memory is. I mean, there's lots of scientific studies, but you can do it yourself. If you start to, tell a story to your friends, which is a conglomerate of other stories, maybe just to simplify it, you'll find that in a very short time, you'll start to say, is that how it happened? I'm pretty sure that's how it happened, but I'm not quite sure, because that new narrative becomes your memory.
Yeah, like each time we remember something, we're not really actually remembering the event. We're remembering the last time we had the memory of it.
What we have is kind of a screenplay, and we fill in all the detail with stock footage and new content that's influenced by our current set of expectations and biases.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the telephone game. Every time we recall something, the story shifts more and more towards where we are.
Right.
And that becomes our certainty that what we remember is true, and our certainty that what we saw, we know it's true because I saw something.
Mm.
But we know about the, how reliable eyewitness accounts are.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned we're all vulnerable to belief.
Absolutely.
Would you say that all beliefs are harmful, or are some beliefs not harmful?
That is a brilliant question, and I want to assure the audience that I did prompt him with that one. No, some beliefs are more harmful than others.
Okay.
And I think that beliefs. One of the premises of my book is that all beliefs are harmful to some extent. There are no benign beliefs.
Oh.
But of
They're
course,
all
the
harmful.
extent is different, right? Some are fairly innocent. If I believe my mother loves me, that's pretty benign and innocent. But if I believe, say, for instance, in some mild conspiracy theory, well, then it becomes that much easier to believe, well, if I believe that, well, what about this? That could be true, that too. Well, sure. And pretty soon you move out on a limb until you're way out on a branch somewhere, adopting a belief that you never would have considered from the start. And before you know it, you're believing that aliens are going to pick you up after you drink poison, right?
Yeah.
So that's the problem with all beliefs, because
Okay.
any belief modifies your thinking, so it becomes much easier to adopt the next belief, and the next more unbelievable belief becomes
Okay.
much more plausible to you, right? Because it's only a small step.
Do you define belief in your book?
I do. I start by talking about facts. I define facts because, surprisingly, you'd think facts is something that everybody sort of understands, but
Right.
there's a lot of nuance to what facts are. So I start out the first chapter talking about facts.
Okay.
Then I talk about beliefs, and then I talk about delusions, and then I talk about more profound delusions, and then I talk about solutions and ways that we can immunize ourselves and protect ourselves and improve how we think about facts to become more fact-based in our thinking. Because our brains are agnostic with regard to facts and beliefs. Our brains will believe anything. There's no inherent mechanism, very few inherent mechanisms in our brain to, if we're told over and over again that 2 + 2 is 5, we're going to start believing that because our brains are like a computer neural network, garbage in, and we have incredible powers of rationalization. So we can take any garbage in and rationalize it
Right.
to come up with any output.
Got it.
And so, one of the, where did I get up on this for?
Can I ask real quick?
Yeah, jump in.
Do
Save me from myself here.
you remember your definition for belief that you had in the book?
Well, a simple belief is something that you take to be a fact, even though there is no evidence of it, or there's an absence of evidence where there should be, where you expect to find it.
A belief is something you think is a fact that you don't have evidence for.
Or there's a lack of evidence when you
the
expect
other
to
way,
find it.
the other way around.
And that's critical because a lot of people try to rationalize belief by claiming that you can't prove a negative. But that's not true. That's a misstatement.
The
When there
absence of
should
evidence.
be in fact, that's a misquote. What it really should be stated properly is to say an absence of evidence is not necessarily. There are cases where, if I drop a rock and I expect it to fall, if it doesn't fall, I can say there's something very wrong here.
Mhm.
So there are cases, in many more cases than we tend to admit, when, for instance, the big elephant in the room belief in God. That is such a huge belief that you would surely expect to find direct evidence if it were true, and there is none. And so, there are cases where you can definitely say something is not true because everywhere we would expect to find evidence of it, every test we have made has failed to prove it. And if it were true, it would certainly have been determined. I mean, we can detect neutrinos. We can now detect evidence of other dimensions. It is not reasonable that, for instance, as one example, that we wouldn't be able to scientifically detect the influence of God in the world, which is purported to be so profound.
Okay, so just so I get this correctly, your definition of belief is a statement you think is fact without evidence, or you think it's, what was the
Or
second part?
despite a lack of evidence where you expect to find it.
Okay, or despite lack of evidence where there should be.
Yes, where you would expect that you should find it.
Okay.
Right. If it were true, then I would see this and I don't.
Okay.
And then beyond that, it would be the definition of delusion.
Okay. So what's the difference between a belief and a delusion?
Well, a belief could be a mistake. It could be just a mistaken belief. You could be in error. But a delusion is when you continue to persist in your belief, even when there is a large body of evidence to the contrary. So, for instance, I might believe my mother loves me. I may be mistaken, but it's a belief. You can't really prove it. But we don't really worry about that. But if I deny evolution, for instance, that progresses from a belief to a delusion, because there is such a almost infinite body of evidence from every field of science for 150 years that to persist in a denial of evolution is now a delusion.
Okay, gotcha. Can some beliefs be true?
Yes. I mean, we technically wouldn't call it a belief, we'd call it a fact.
Okay. So beliefs that are true are facts.
But we shouldn't convey, see, one of the problems in just having this discussion is that we use the word belief in a very general sense in our normal language.
That's why it's really important for me to
Absolutely.
understand your definition.
Which is why I spent 2 chapters trying to define them clearly so that as they're used in my book,
Yeah.
we know what we're talking about.
Yeah. And for the rest of this interview, I'm going to keep your definition in mind when we say the word belief.
Yes, and not the generic definition of belief.
Right.
Which is like anything you think.
Okay. So true beliefs are facts. All beliefs are harmful to some extent.
Yes. That's
Okay.
my assertion.
Because they're not facts.
Because they force your brain to rationalize them. Right?
Instead of using evidence.
If something, well, or despite the lack of evidence, in order for us to persist with a belief, we have to think of ourselves as rational. We have to think that the world makes sense. And so if we believe that rocks rise up when you let go of them, we have to rationalize somehow how that's true. And that rationalization then compromises our thinking, so that then our thinking is compromised in other areas of life, and it's also makes us susceptible to more profound beliefs and delusions.
Okay. If I have a belief and I don't know if it's true or not, but I believe it, and it happens to be true, and I'm not using evidence, would that be harmful?
It could be. I mean, even a belief that turns out to be true could be harmful if you're rationalizing it in ways that are simply not rational.
Okay. So if I'm not using rational means to support the belief, even if it's true, that would still be harmful.
I would say you're
still could be
compromising
harmful.
your rational capacity. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
And of course, there are things we can do, which we might move on to try to ensure that we are thinking rationally, because we can't self-assess very well. An insane person doesn't know that they're insane. Everything to them feels, whatever beliefs you have or I have, seems so compelling to us. They're supported by all of our memories, by all of our perceptions, by all of our logic. They just seem so profoundly obvious to us that we can't really self-assess very well. That's why we need tools, and we need external mechanisms to help us really evaluate what is true and what is not.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about how do we what's the vaccine that we could take to immune ourselves from beliefs?
And there are a lot of things we can do. One of them is to understand how we're susceptible to beliefs and where they come from, because understanding the problem is often provides us with the insight we need to start to respond in a more preventative fashion.
So understanding how we form beliefs is one.
How we're susceptible, what makes us, it's
Okay.
just like, with germ theory, the first step to protecting yourself from a virus might be to understand how it's transmitted and why, do we get it through the mouth? Is it a contact? So knowing the mechanism through which we absorb it and what the symptoms are is the first step to take to try to have a healthier, rational mind.
So understanding what beliefs are.
And why we're susceptible to them and
Yeah.
how we get infected by them. And also to start to recognize the signs of beliefs. For instance, fallacious arguments are one starting point for starting to recognize and raising a red flag in your brain in terms of when you suspect this might be a poorly rationalized belief. And we can all start to learn the patterns of various specious arguments. And so one of the things I give in my book is I discuss them, and I give an appendix with a lot of examples of prototypical specious arguments. And if you start to listen to people, for instance, I'll say, I don't know what you watch, but if you want to learn to recognize specious arguments, watch some of the people on Fox News like Sean Hannity. He's a master. I mean, he puts out specious arguments one after another. And as your radar goes up, you start to recognize them more and more readily.
We're talking like appeal to emotion.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Appeal to authority. There are dozens,
Yeah.
but it's not that hard to start to learn them and recognize them and start to have your radar go up very quickly when people start to give you specious logic and specious arguments, and that's a very good sign that what you're being told to believe is not well supported.
Are there any facts that we could be wrong about?
We're wrong about facts all the time.
But facts are beliefs that are true, though, right?
There are sometimes we assert a fact and we could be wrong. That doesn't make it a belief. That just makes it part of the scientific process. And the next thing is to sort of learn to think scientifically about facts and knowledge and how to validate knowledge. And if you start thinking like a scientist and start employing on your own the scientific method, then you can apply that to a lot of things in your real world thinking. And so the lesson there is that we might be wrong about a fact, but that's okay as long as it doesn't persist as a belief. As soon as evidence emerges, we then revise that fact.
So evidence can turn a belief into a fact, or
it can prove an asserted fact to be an incorrect fact.
Okay.
And if you persist in it, it's a belief.
Okay.
Or even a delusion.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you hold any beliefs?
Well, as I say, I have to be skeptical because it's
Using
hard to self-assess.
your definition.
Using my definition, I have some very benign ones that I realize are beliefs. A little bit of superstitious and terrible. I have a little feeling about karma, like if I keep that 12 cents in extra change that the cashier gave me, I'm going to get like a flat tire. But that's kind of innocent. I kind of let myself have that. But my stronger belief would be the beliefs I espouse in my book. A lot of humanist beliefs about the world and about human interaction, and a fundamental belief that inherently beliefs are dangerous, and that decisions based upon fact are inherently better and superior than decisions based upon belief.
Okay. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
And these are kind of just questions I like to ask basically anyone. If we had a scale from 0 to 100, or like a pie chart, what percentage of the conclusions that you currently hold about the world that we share do you think are accurate?
I have a hard time, especially a hard time answering that, perhaps, relative to other guests, in that because I have such a high degree of skepticism about self-assessment.
Mhm.
Um, but given my training as a scientist, all that I've thought about this, um, I think I have some subset of beliefs that are invalid, and sometimes that becomes evident, and I acknowledge that. Um, I might say I'm going to be modest and say, or maybe be egotistical and say 80%.
Okay. 80% of the.
Although I have that, I pulling that out, I have really little confidence in that number.
Okay. Where does the number come from?
It comes, I guess, from a sense of, to some extent, we all have to have some confidence in our thinking. I mean, we can't doubt everything. And so, for instance, um, I'm an absolute atheist. I have no hint, of any possibility that God could exist. I don't buy Zeno's argument. Um, and I think that's proven by the facts and the lack of facts. And so the vast majority of people nevertheless believe that. So I have to think I'm somewhat better than average, perhaps.
Okay.
But
Are you from Lake Wobegon?
no, no.
That came up in a conversation the other day where we were talking about, Lake Wobegon, where all the men are good looking, all the women are strong, and all the children are above average.
Right.
Just kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
All right, so you're 80 out of 100 conclusions that you currently hold.
I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong about 20.
Okay, gotcha. So this next question is a little bit different. What percentage of the total conclusions that you hold about the world that we share do you hope are accurate?
I hope like 2% are accurate.
You hope 2% of your conclusions
yes,
are accurate?
Yes.
Does that mean that you hope 98% are inaccurate?
I do, yes. Because I have a tremendous fear about the way we're headed and about our potential as humans to overcome our challenges, our ability to think rationally about things, our ability to address problems like climate change, our ability to hold on to our democracy, our ability to overcome superstitious thinking and theological thinking. So I hope I'm wrong, and that we will rise to those challenges. That I'm skeptical that we really have the capacity to address.
You said that you lived around here, right?
Yeah.
So did you drive or no?
No, we walk.
You walked. Do you have a car?
We do.
Okay. How confident are you that your car is still parked at your house?
Well, virtually 100%.
Okay.
I allow the possibility that it may have been stolen.
Which bucket does that fall into? The bucket that you hope you're right about that, or that you hope you're wrong about?
Oh boy. Well, I hope I'm right about that.
Okay.
It's still there. Sure.
Okay. So that's in the 2% out of 100.
I'm kind of throwing out all the mundane things, like I believe there's grass here. I believe you're sitting here. I believe the camera's turned on. I'm kind of throwing all those things out.
Okay, we've got the bucket.
Background radiation.
We've got the bucket, and it contains all of your conclusions, total, about the world. What percentage of that bucket do you hope are accurate?
I don't know if I can play this game very well. I'm confident that there's a tree there. There's no question of hoping it's accurate.
Another way to phrase it would be, what's your preference that they are accurate? What percentage would you prefer are accurate?
I can't answer. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Cool.
I feel like you're doing some sort of study there that I'm not contributing well towards, but
No, it's fine. It's just interesting way of maybe having people think about something they may not have thought of before. Like, how accurate do you want your conclusions to be?
well, I want them to be as accurate as possible.
Okay.
And
Okay.
based upon at least sound logic or the available evidence. Right?
Got it. Got it. Cool.
All right.
That was great. I'm really excited about your book, actually. I can put the name of the book in the description of this video if you'd like.
Sure. I like that.
That way, if you want some promotion, my channel isn't that big.
Mhm.
It's growing, but it's not really that big or anything. But I would like to support you in any way I could.
I think this went well. You're a good interviewer, and
Thanks.
I'd appreciate a little promotion.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Pandemic of Delusion by Tyson and did you want to give your last name from
Gill. You can find it on Amazon. It's posted there now.
Gill?
Yeah.
Okay. I normally bleep out last names, but in a situation like this, if you want to get promotion,
Absolutely.
easier to find you and stuff. If you see me again, I would love to maybe have a second interview that's a little bit more traditional of what I do, and we can explore all beliefs are harmful. It'd be fun to
All right.
explore that.
Well, it's a lot of fun, David. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's good to meet you, Tyson.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Feel free to keep in touch.
I meant to ask you if you had any questions for me.
No, I just wish you the best. I think it sounds like you're doing a lot of good investigation into how we think and about that gets us thinking about facts and belief and other views about the world. So
Yeah.
good job.
Thinking about thinking.
Mhm.
It's really coming down. Do you have something in mind?
And whether the sufficiency of the reasons that we're using to support a belief or something that we think is fact
It's really coming down.
matches the confidence that we have that it's fact. That's kind of what I like to investigate.
Yeah.
Cool. You'll probably get a email from me, soundepistemology@gmail. And yeah. So I have your consent to upload this?
Yeah, you're gonna appropriately cut the chatter on the ends.
It's all long form. I basically don't cut anything. If that's okay.
My business advisor says yes.
You can always change your mind. Like I said, it's probably not going to go up for another few months. So if you wake up in a month or so and you're like, just let me know and I won't upload it.
No problems.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Good to meet you.
All right, good to meet you too.
Take care.
Thank you,